Well, let's be clear about the problem because it is real and it is imminent. Conservative legal organizations are right now drafting legislation to ban travel for abortion. It was discussed at 2 anti-abortion conferences already. Republican Texas legislators are saying out loud they are working with the National Association of Christian Lawmakers to draft bills restricting travel modeled after their barbaric vigilante abortion ban.
And indeed, state legislatures are, but let's be clear, it's not just them. And let's be clear, the Republicans lied to you saying, oh no, we don't want to end reproductive rights. We just want to throw it back to the states. Let the people decide. It's a democratic thing. If your state doesn't like it, then they'll outlaw it. If they do like it, it'll be free. You'll be free. That's what democracy is about. Except you're not free and they don't want you to be free. If you were to leave their barbaric states to go to a place that respects your rights, the rights you've had for longer than you've been alive, they want to criminalize that. They want punishment against you because it was never about giving it up to the states. It was about taking away rights. And this is the level that they can do it now. But if they can ban it nationally, they will. If they can lock you up if you cross state borders, they will. State legislatures are working that. And in fact, US Senator James Lankford just objected to Democrats' efforts to pass by unanimous consent the Freedom to Travel for Healthcare Act of 2022. That's what Patty Murray was talking about in that clip. This bill would have made clear that patients can cross state lines for abortion care and empower the US Attorney General and affected individuals to take legal action against those who attempt to restrict that right. That sort of fundamental right that you cannot be bound by state law when you're not even in that state. Doesn't make any sense. It's clearly not constitutional, but we don't have a democracy and we barely have a Supreme Court at this point. And so it will be whatever they have the power to make it, River. That's my fear.
That's right. I mean, they want to define everything. That's ultimately their goal, is that they will define why you're traveling, why it's illegal, why you're a criminal. Basically, everyone is a criminal to the Republicans who's not a Republican. Basically, if you're not a Republican, you're a criminal. That is like the binary that they believe in. And so they're essentially working to criminalize every aspect of daily life, because like the thing about criminalizing travel for abortion, restricting all these things and kicking it back to the states is they've gerrymandered most states, even blue states, and they're working on taking over the blue states as we speak through varying methods that are very terrifying, that most people are not paying attention to, literally creating community centers for youth and bringing them in to try to diversify their votes, like attracting Latino, Black youth and like peddling them information so that they will vote Republican. They are, just think about the implications of a state like California, I don't know, potentially passing universal health care and then criminalizing travel to that state to receive any type of health care. That to me is that's what this is the beginning of. It's also, they've been doing this with trans healthcare for years. And so they're essentially making it, like, unless you're one of us, you don't get to travel throughout I had friends who were pulled over literally in Texas the moment they crossed the border because they have California plates. And their ID was checked and they don't have a real ID yet. And the police officer was like, this is useless to me. So it's basically like you cross the border into a scary state, like an unfriendly state, and they're like, papers, please.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah, you think you're just crossing a state border, but it's basically another country and it's certainly another decade.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so it has never been the case that one state gets to restrict the rights of what people do when they're not in that state. That's not how government works at all. Government is based on territory, or at least it's supposed to. But again, this isn't about the Constitution. This isn't about anything. This is about oppression. They like it. They want more of it. It's the only thing that they can offer to their base, is the idea that the people they've been trained to hate and fear will suffer even more than these Republican politicians make their own base suffer. And this is not the only way. I mean, if they can lock you up or massively fine you for getting healthcare in a different state, when they inevitably outlaw birth control, which they will try to do, what's to stop them from searching your car when you drive back into the state and confiscating your contraband condoms? No, this is what they're working towards. And I'm gonna skip ahead a little bit because it's getting even more disgusting. Not only are right-wing groups trying to stop you from traveling to exercise rights that still exist in some states that are acting right. Texas is fighting the Biden administration for the recent executive order, which doesn't even do much. All it says is, if you are in danger of dying and an abortion is the only thing that would stop you from dying, an emergency room has to treat that emergency. Well, they don't like that. The Attorney General is trying to stop that. Bear in mind, by the way, that Texas has an exemption for the life of the parent in that case. So this isn't even about how are you can't impose that on Texas. It's consistent with Texas law, which means there's only a couple of options of why you would go about this, why you would go about fighting this. Either it ain't about Texas at all, and this is just about them raising something that can go to the Supreme Court so they can get it knocked down. That's a likely possibility. Or it implies that Texas has that exemption now, but perhaps won't sometime in the near future. And this executive order would be inconvenient in that case, River.
I think, John, that it implies both of what you're talking. They will do both, and then some third option that we haven't even thought of yet. And I think that, and we'll get into this a little bit later with the exemption idea, is that the exemption is there to me. My opinion on this is that they sometimes include exemptions to convince bipartisanship. Because Democrats will fall for that. Because if they include the exemption, oh, well, there's some morality to it, but the reality is it's unethical. It has nothing to do with morals, number one. The other side of that is that they are the ones who decide what is an exemption and what is not. They are the ones who create the terms again. And so when they say this is an exemption, but it's not gonna apply, then what's the point? You know what I mean? Like the law to them is incredibly flexible unless it is being wielded against somebody else. And then it is not. It is the ultimate.
Yeah, the fundamental truth is that they know that the things they want to do are not popular and are not going to become popular. They still want to do it. And so they do things like these exemptions that they don't philosophically believe in as a short-term politically pragmatic thing to do. If you believe that abortion is murder, it makes no sense whatsoever to have exemptions for rape or for incest. Arguably, maybe for saving the life of the mother, to get rid of those exemptions would be consistent. It would be horrifying. It should never be allowed, but it would be consistent with how horrifying they are. But bear in mind, again, there are even more steps they want to go past. Again, knowing that this is not popular. They want to end IVF. Couples that can't necessarily conceive through the normal mechanisms can get scientific help in doing so. They want to end that. Bear in mind, that's a thing to have a kid that you couldn't have. They say that's their goal, but they want to end that too. Rebecca Parma is the senior legislative associate for Texas Right to Life and says, ultimately, we believe that all human life is valuable, except for migrants, let them die, except for criminals, the state can kill them. She didn't say that stuff, but I can tell that it was in her head. And it deserves our legal protection from that beginning moment of fertilization, whether that occurs through normal means or through IVF. And so certainly we want those embryos who are created through the IVF process protected. I don't think it's something that's gonna happen next legislative session because obviously IVF is something that is part of our culture and something that I think is pretty near and dear to a lot of people who desire families and desire children. All that means is, I don't think that we can do this now because it's horrifying and people don't want it, but I want it. I want more control. I say how you get pregnant. I misread this ancient text. And so I say how you get to have a kid or whether you're forced to have a kid, whether the state can literally chain you to a hospital bed and force you to give birth to the child of your father's rape of you as a 10-year-old. I say that. I get that it's not popular. We've tried to convince people of our position for more than 50 years and we're still repugnant. Nobody wants us. But I say what goes because this is not a democracy. That's their position, all of it.
Yeah, they want complete and absolute control over what does and doesn't happen. I also think specifically about IVF definitely has some roots in their homophobic and transphobic push, and they're probably willing to wait on IVF because as soon as they turn over Obergefell and all the other like legislation that passed to allow civil rights for queer people, they will then go after IVF because IVF is obviously used by everyone. It is not like a queer specific procedure. However, if you are queer and you want to like have children outside of adoption, that's your typical route, these days. And so it makes sense to me that to me is probably a large thread of why they don't want that. But I mean, it is just a derangement. It is a derangement syndrome to believe that embryos are I don't even know how to explain like something. I mean, we were given this opportunity, it's an opportunity that we were given, and you can just leave people alone. It's like you were saying this, misreading this text. It's like, I will say the first commandment is thou shalt have no other gods before me. And I will tell you that abortion is their God. They are, they believe this is all they care about. They care more about abortion than actual God, and they don't see that though, because they're so sure of what they believe in,
Yeah, and they don't care about the actual biblical position on abortion. They're not interested in it.
No, and they don't care about the human person, the mother, the parent. They do not care about that life, because you said something about, if you believe that abortion is murder, you might care about, if the life of the mother. They do not. Even in that situation, that life is over. That life does not exist, and it's wild to me.
For more political news breakdowns, interviews, stories of activism, and me trying my hardest to care about the occasional big celebrity news story, subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/The Damage Report. And you can ring the bell wherever it is so you don't miss anything.